Paley's design argument is the classical form of the teleological argument. It was expressed in his book Natural Theology, and as Archbishop of Carlisle he was arguing for the God of classical theism. Just as with the other versions that we have seen, Paley's argument has the following key features. I wonder if you can remember what they mean. You should include these features in an introduction to the teleological argument, and you should include their definitions. Paley's argument is best expressed in his analogy of the watch. The following slides are quotes from his analogy. They are available in the notes that you have been given. Clearly, the stone in this analogy has no complexity. It's simple, there's no fitting together of parts. And if we saw the stone lying on the heath, it would be perfectly reasonable for us to assume that it's just always been there, and we don't even have to worry about this answer being ridiculous or strange in any way. In contrast, if we found the watch lying on the heath, we would find that our answer or explanation for it must be quite different. To suggest such an object to have lain there forever is ridiculous. Paley asks us to consider why it seems ridiculous in this instance and yet not in the instance of the stone. The reason for it being ridiculous is that there are several parts that fit together for a purpose when we look at the watch, and yet this is not the case in regard to the stone. This helps us to conclude that for the watch there must have been a designer with intelligence who constructed or designed this watch for the purpose that it now serves. Paley points out that all the features in the watch that point us towards the conclusion of having an intelligent designer, the world also contains, and it contains all of them, in fact to a greater degree than even the watch did. Thus, if we say the watch must be designed, we have to say it about the world as well. Paley goes on to compare the pocket watch with other aspects of the world or within the world. These small details of things to him have the fitting together of parts, the order, the complexity, and the purpose of the watch. Therefore, we must postulate a designer. Order is apparent in the world and also in the watch as well. Clearly in the watch, order is present because there is a consistent, clear rhythm to its timekeeping. Within the world, there is clear organisation of the movements within the planet. We could use the example of seasons and that constant, orderly construction. There's also complexity in both. Within the watch, several parts fit together. You've got cogs, wheels, hands, faces. Within the planet, there's billions of species of plant and animals. And within this complexity, there's also interaction between the parts. So for the watch, the cogs turn, allowing the hands to move in a regular sequence. Each part does not exist completely in isolation. They all work together. And equally, in ecosystems within the world, there is also an interaction between the parts. We might say that bees pollinate flowers, enabling reproduction, which allows life, and all the different parts fit together. If one part were to be eliminated, then the whole structure would fail. And there is also in both a sense of purpose. The purpose for the watch is for telling of the time. The purpose for the world seems to be to allow life to flourish, and it performs both of these purposes very, very well. Now, Paley includes two aspects to his version of the argument, and it is best expressed by the Latin word qua, meaning relating to or by virtue of. He argues first design qua purpose, and this we've seen in the above analogy and argument. But he also argues design qua regularity. In design qua purpose, we saw the comparison between the watch and items like the human eye. We saw the fitting together of parts, and we saw the idea that there was a goal or purpose. For the eye, the purpose would be sight. For the watch, the purpose would be telling of the time. And the complexity of all these parts fitting together for a purpose suggests an intelligent designer. In design qua regularity, he points towards the laws of nature. We can look at Newton's laws of motion and gravity. He looks to the orbit of the planets and so on, and he notices that these all obey the same universal laws. There is a regular, orderly, consistent pattern to their orbit. And just like Aquinas, Paley postulates that there must be a guiding intelligence for this regularity. Without a guiding intelligence, you would have disorder, you would have randomness. Now, as we've said before, Paley does believe that this designer must be the god of classical theism. However, he does support his argument further by pointing out that even if we were to deny the following, or if the following were true in this watch analogy, and as a result we could get rid of the qualities of the God of Christianity, it doesn't challenge the idea that we still need to have a designer. For instance, if we had never seen a watch before, and it was the first time that we saw it when we were crossing the heath, that doesn't mean we would say, oh, it's always been here. We would still postulate a designer, because we would notice all of those features that are present in the watch, and we would say, even though I don't know what this thing is, I still say it must have been put there, it must have been dropped, somebody must have made it. Even if I didn't know what the watch was for, I would still postulate a designer. And if I say both these things about the world itself, then I can still postulate the designer. I haven't seen any other world that's been designed, but that doesn't mean there isn't a designer for this one. Even if I don't know what the purpose of this world is for, doesn't mean that I won't postulate a designer for it, because all of the features of design are still present within it. If the watch were in fact evil, Paley still says it doesn't matter, you'd still suggest there's a designer. Now this challenges the qualities of the god of classical theism. It suggests that he's not necessarily all good. Paley says it doesn't matter when we're thinking about that, because even if God were bad, there would still be the designer. Even if there is evil in the world, even if the watch were to have a boxing glove come and punch you in the face every time it hit the hour, we would still suggest that there is a designer. And it doesn't matter if we were to postulate the idea that there is more than one designer for the watch. It's not necessarily one individual person that creates a watch, and so here, if there was more than one designer for the world, then we could still say there's a designer. So Paley's argument is not challenged by these difficulties.